Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. I'm sorry, I've been on vacation for the last few days, so I was not present when we got a huge information dump regarding Dragon Age. So I'm a little bit late to the party, but I am so happy to be here. It is really, really nice to finally get some real information about this game. I know a lot of you are super down about this trailer that has been shown. I've seen all sorts of criticisms and issues that people have pointed out with it. I definitely agree with some of it, but I think there's some good things here as well that we should be taking a look at. So I want to unpack all of it. Let's go ahead and dive in. As usual, I'll start with what I like. I do not like the name change, but at the same time, I really, really appreciate the reasoning. So I'm good with it overall. Of course, the original name for the new Dragon Age games, Dragon Age Dread Wolf, and now it's going to be Dragon Age Veilguard. Veilguard is not catchy at all. It doesn't really tell you anything about the game unless you really understand and know the lore. And even if you know the lore, like myself, it still doesn't really grab your imagination. So just all the way around, I think that name is terrible. However, the developer did state the reason why they switched it from Dread Wolf is, of course, Solus is Dread Wolf. This game is not going to be wholly centered around Solus, and so they felt like it served the story better by changing the name to something different. I love that reasoning. I really appreciate that the developer seems to have a lot of pride in the story that they've crafted, and they want to ensure that this game is presented in a way that respects the story that they have crafted. So all of that, good stuff. I'm good with it. Again, I don't like the name. I don't think the name is good from a marketing standpoint. In fact, BioWare said, we feel like we would have gotten more clicks and more attention and more positive marketing by keeping the name as Dread Wolf, but it wouldn't be true to what we want to do. And therefore, we're going to change it. Hey, you know what? I'm good with that. Another thing I like about the game is that it appears there's going to be a huge focus on party members and making sure that their personal quests and their storylines are tightly roped into the main story. I always love when games do this because it makes more of your actions seem purposeful. Sometimes party member quest lines can feel a little bit weird because you're doing things completely separate from your main story, and it kind of messes with the tone. It kind of pulls you out of the immersion because you're like, considering everything that's going on, would I really take time out of my day to be bothered with this? So to know that a lot of these party member quests, they're going to be roped into factions that are deeply involved in the storyline and help you understand things that are happening in your quest, I think that's all great stuff and really adds to the player experience. So good on BioWare for making sure they do that. I also really like the different backgrounds we've seen for the party members that have been released. So, of course, we've got the female Kunari, we've got the Dalish Warden, we've got the Necromancer for Navarra. There's going to be a lot of different characters in our group who provide more lore about places or groups that we've heard about in the previous game. So I think there are some problems with this group, obviously, but at the core, there's a piece of each of them that I think is going to be very interesting to flesh out. Having a Grey Warden party member who I at least hope is more experienced and has been in the organization for a long time, as opposed to Alistair, who of course was brand new to it. I think this should be very, very interesting. I absolutely cannot wait to meet him. Since we're on the subject of party members, I should also mention I'm a really big fan of adding Harding as a companion. She was a big hit in Inquisition, and while you do have some opportunities to talk with her, you don't really learn all of her backstory. So I think there's plenty of room to have her as a full party member and really unpack a lot of her layers. Now, I thought she was able to enter into a romance with the Inquisitor, as long as you hadn't romanced anybody in the main game. So not sure how that gets handled in Veilguard, but regardless, she's definitely a great addition, and I'm really, really looking forward to what BioWare has done with her. And then the last thing I like about the information that's been released thus far is it appears we're going to be able to visit more areas than we did in previous games. games. So in the first game, we were mainly in Ferelden. Second game, we spent the vast majority of our time in Kirkwall. And then the third game, I can't remember. I think we spent most of our time in Orlais. We might have visited like one other place, but in this game, it looks like we're going to visit Taventer. We're going to spend some time in Antiva. We might be able to visit Weishaupt. It appears that there's a lot of different areas which should have fantastic opportunities to explore more lore and learn a lot more about some of the different places and groups we've heard about in previous games. So all of that, fantastic, especially again for somebody like me who loves all things Dragon Age. I'm really, really excited about some of the possibilities presented by what BioWare has revealed. Unfortunately, though, as many of you have mentioned, there's a caveat to a lot of this. And so I definitely don't want to gloss over that. Let's go ahead and go through this. The cinematic trailer looks whack. Let's just call it what it is. The cartoony look does not fit in with Dragon Age at all. And even if it did, this comes off as very, very kiddish and cartoony, whereas Dragon Age is mature, dark fantasy. It's supposed to be blood, grit, grime, and borderline horror when it comes to Dragon Age. That is not what you get from this trailer at all. It looks like Valorant. It looks like League of Legends. It looks like they're trying to appeal to a kiddie fan base. Now, I think there's two caveats we should keep in mind. One, Dragon Age historically has always released cinematic trailers that look nothing like what you actually play. All right, the Dragon Age Origins cinematic trailer, the tone was correct, but the way it looked did not at all match what you actually experienced in the game. Same with Dragon Age 2. Inquisition, the cinematic trailer was much closer, but still, it wasn't exact. It wasn't an exact one-to-one match. So I wouldn't necessarily say that you can look at this cinematic trailer and believe that it's indicative of what the actual gameplay will be like. But I think part of the reason why I'm not as hard on this game about the cartoony look as the rest of you is, in my opinion, the concept art that was released over a year ago made it pretty plain and obvious they were going for a more cartoony look. So I was kind of prepared for them to go in this direction. I really, really hope the actual gameplay doesn't look this cartoony. I think this is overboard and looks borderline childish, but I definitely feel like it's going to be a more cartoony look than what we've gotten in any of the three games, and that's not automatically a bad thing. I would have preferred a more realistic look, but I'm not going to jump out the window and say the cartoony look just automatically makes it not Dragon Age. There are some other aspects of this, though, that I feel much more strongly about. One of them is the lack of focus on Solus. Again, I'm perfectly fine with them changing the name from Dread Wolf, and I'm perfectly fine with them deciding to craft a story that kind of goes beyond Solus. But I gotta admit, this trailer, it feels like a strong deviation from the threads left dangling from Inquisition that I feel like this game should be focused on. And one of those threads obviously was Solus being the Dread Wolf and potentially trying to tear down the veil. But to be frank, even more importantly than that thread is that it's pretty apparent at the end of the Trespasser DLC, Solus is trying to reunite the elves. And the enslavement of the elves is a massive, massive part of the lore in the first three games. So to me, that's almost a game in and of itself, with this godlike figure basically trying to unite all the elves together again, potentially to strike back at humanity and any other race that has been involved in their enslavement. And I don't see any tone or threads of that placed here at all. And I'll be honest, it's a little disturbing. Another, I wouldn't necessarily say thread, but another aspect of Dragon Age lore that I would just expect this game to explore is the relationship, or rivalry, I guess, between Taventer and the Chantry, right? That's been talked about through all three games. The way magic is handled completely differently in Taventer, and the Chantry wants to see the destruction of Taventer. Like, there's so many deep, dark, mature conflicts that should all come to a head in this game. And this trailer doesn't put that front and center. Instead, it comes off as exploring something completely, wholly different. And I think that would be a massive mistake. Now, I know that's an easy thing to say. I'm 40 years old. I've been playing games for 20 plus years. I already told you I was a deep, deep fan of Dragon Age, but I'm fully aware a new Dragon Age game hasn't come out for 10 years, right? So it's understandable that BioWare would say, we've got to put out this marketing in a way that doesn't really put the focus on old Dragon Age fans, people who are fans of the original series. Instead, we've got to focus on all these people playing Valorant and League of Legends and similar things and see if we can draw them into the series. Usually I would understand and I would say, fine, do what you got to do. I think it's a massive mistake when it comes to Dragon Age for the simple reason that Dragon Age fans are rabid. There are some games that sell well, but they don't really have rabid fans. Nobody talks about the game. They're just like, all right, a new Dynasty Warriors is coming out. I guess I'll play it. I have never had somebody actually come up to me and say, hey, I played the latest Dynasty Warriors. It was amazing, right? But those games, for what I've seen at least, always sell well. Or at least they sell well enough to do another one, right? Dragon Age is completely different. The people who are fans of Dragon Age, they talk about it, they make concept art about it, they do everything that they can to market these games. So centering your marketing around the people who have historically been Dragon Age fans makes a ton of sense. It's just good business. And so to see BioWare do what kind of, in my opinion, is almost a complete opposite, it just looks like a mistake. It looks like a terrible mistake. To me, you should be centering it in the lore and in the tone that the original Dragon Age games had so that you could motivate the original fans to say, oh man, this is going to be awesome. If you haven't experienced Dragon Age before, get on the bandwagon right here, right now. There is one way, though, where it seems like they're trying to do a bit of fan service to old fans that I absolutely hate. I think it's terrible that Varric is a party member. I know there are a lot of really, really massive Varric fans and that some of you all might be happy to see him again. I'm not. We already had 2 games with Varric. It makes no sense for him to be on this team. Without having experienced the game, without having experienced the story, maybe they do make it make sense. But from the outside looking in, it makes no sense. He's supposed to be in Kirkwall, leading Kirkwall. He had his time in Dragon Age. You're not supposed to get the same party members over and over again. And maybe it wouldn't be so bad to me if we at least had the party member who should clearly be part of the group. Where is Dorian? Dorian is the person that we should be rolling with. Dorian is the person who from Inquisition had the hugest dangling thread that had to be resolved into Venter. Dorian is supposed to be coming to Deventer to deal with these enemies of his family. Iron Bull is supposed to be following him, staying on the outskirts, recruiting allies, and together they're supposed to figure out how to strike back. Not only is Dorian nowhere to be found in anything that's been discussed about this game, but Freddie Prinze Jr., who was the voice actor for Iron Bull, said BioWare never reached out to him about reprising the character. So what? They just gonna basically dump all that? That would be terrible. That would be absolutely awful. And since we're on the subject of party members, they've now limited us to 7 party members, which is the lowest amount you've ever had in a Dragon Age game. And you can only take 2 party members with you, when previously you've always been able to take at least 3. I don't understand why developers keep limiting the party members, especially BioWare, whose games do the best when they are mainly focused on party members. Like, you should be allowing people to take more party members and making the group larger to lean into what has historically been your strength. I don't get it. And so to wrap this up again, I'm not as down as a lot of you are. I see the problems with this trailer, but at the end of the day, I do feel like we are going to get a good game, a game that's at least enjoyable. I don't believe that we're going to get a game that's as great as the Dragon Age series. And frankly, I don't think it's going to stack up against the rest of the series, but I don't feel like we're looking at a situation similar to Mass Effect Andromeda compared to the original Mass Effect series. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think it's just going to be a good game that we're going to be like, all right, that was interesting to play, and then move on. Which previously, the Dragon Age games were always real landmarks when they came out, where you were like, even with Dragon Age 2, which I didn't particularly care for, there were some really, really cool and interesting things that were done in that game that made it stand out. Even though it wasn't as great as the other two in the series, you could look at it and say, okay, there are some really, really interesting things the developer did here. That's all I'm hoping for this, and I'm still hopeful that we're going to get it. Really, really looking forward to the gameplay video that's supposed to come out tomorrow. I'll absolutely do content for that and give you all my thoughts on what the game is actually going to look like. But for now, this is the information that we have. I will do a separate video walking through the information that we have regarding each party member. Again, I feel like the backgrounds that they've set up for the cast are really, really cool. And so that's an aspect of this game that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully I will enjoy. But that's all the information that I have. Really, really interested in your thoughts. How do you feel about this trailer? How do you feel about my breakdown of this trailer? Do you agree, or do you feel like the floor has fallen out and this game is just going to be absolute trash? As always, looking forward to your feedback, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.